Hey there, movie fans. It's Ondi Timoner, and you're watching a special BYOD shot at Sundance 2015, where we're seeing some of the best and most courageous documentary filmmakers unveil their films for the first time. It's a very vulnerable time for them, a very exciting time, and I'm joined today by Jenni Olson, who directed a film that's very unique in its style. It's called The Royal Road, and it's playing in the New Frontiers section here at Sundance. The New Frontiers section is really about experimental work, new media, and films that are really pushing the boundaries. And this film was shot entirely on 16 millimeter, very static shots, and it's all voiceover, personal essay film about Jenni's journey in life, with identity, and with who you are in the world. Welcome to BYOD.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Ondi.
Yeah, absolutely. Congratulations on reaching the finish line with this.
Thank you. It's such an amazing thing.
Yeah. How did this come to you? Because really it's also, you're tying in cinematic history with Vertigo, American history with the Mexican-American War, taking us through California landscapes, and then your own personal history and your own butch identity, and so how did that all come together for you?
Well, so as a filmmaker, I shoot on 16 millimeter, and I've been shooting the landscapes of San Francisco and California since 1997, during the first .com boom, when we had this kind of sense of urgency or I did anyway, of like wanting to document the landscape as it was changing. And so there's this kind of that as a baseline motivation as a filmmaker, just to capture things. And then as a writer, wanting to write both a personal story from a kind of butch perspective, but also this interest in history, especially untold history. The last film I had here at Sundance, it was 10 years ago, The Joy of Life, which was similarly a butch story, and then this stream of consciousness thing, and the history of suicide and the Golden Gate Bridge. So I'm interested in these kind of undertold stories. And in the case of this film, The Royal Road, I was interested in the Spanish colonization of California as something that a lot of Californians don't really know that much about. And that I wanted to tell it in an unconventional way. So it's not like talking heads I did have historical advisors.
And drawing a parallel between the colonization of California and the colonization of all of us into some kind of straight culture, yeah? Something like that?
No, not that literal. More, it's all very poetic and
sounds like beat poetry almost, like a Kerouac essay.
There's a little Kerouac influence, actually. Yeah. Anyway, so
tell us about the colonization of California.
Well, so it's so interesting. Last week, the Pope announced his intention to canonize Junipero Serra, who was the missionary 300 years ago, who came and established the mission system up El Camino Real, the Royal Road, and that was how the Spanish colonized California. So, and he's been hailed as this kind of hero, but of course he has a very problematic legacy, and was really responsible for the decimation of millions of people, and so I kind of look at him as a villain, and as let's talk about and talking about, well, why do we as a country want to kind of forget about that history, because we like to think of ourselves as the good guys. And then similarly with the Mexican-American War, which President Polk offered Mexico $30 million for this territory because they owned it, because Mexico declared independence from Spain in 1821, and then California and the American Southwest all belonged to them. And Polk...
it's a pretty good deal, $30 million.
Yeah, except that they said no, so then he provoked a war to take it. And so I have these great quotes from Ulysses S. Grant, saying I was totally against it as an example of a greater power attacking a lesser power just to take their land. And another...
And that continues today.
Congressman saying,
or oil.
in the murder of Mexicans upon their own soil, I will take no part. So it's really interesting to think about it, especially in this current landscape of, if you will, of anti-immigrant, anti-Mexican sentiment, to really let's talk about that history and why is that history so buried, in our national consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, it is very timely with everything around immigration and looking at, a good part of our population viewing Mexicans as intruders, other people saying, well, they're good, cheap labor, when in fact we're living on their land that we took.
And I mean, there's a saying in the movement, we didn't cross the border crossed us. And then there's Noam Chomsky's great thing. He refers to California as occupied Mexico. And of course.
And then how do you take that and make that? And by the way, with my this reminds me so much of. I wish I had it here. All fourth graders in California have to do this mission project, right?
Yes.
Where it costs the average American family $76 to get the supplies from an art store to make an ode, a three-dimensional ode to one of the missions, of Sarah's missions.
Right.
And I was just in a personal rebellion over this when my son was in fourth grade. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there, and he hated the project. There was no value in it, right? But it's a tradition. It's like a brainwashing tradition. And so we made a graveyard on the side of the church with all the I was killed for who I am. We had dragons on the roof of the. It was
That's
we
fantastic.
had yeah.
Great.
You've got to see this. I don't even know where it is. I put it somewhere though.
So that is the ultimate example, because it's not just tradition, it is actually in the curriculum of the California State Board of Education. I had written a bunch of stuff about that, and I took it out because it's very dense and very, but it is the example of, the mythologizing of Junipero Serra and this whole the Spanish colonial missionaries, and they were such nice guys, and they took care of the Indians, but they didn't, and the fact that is in the curriculum, that every fourth grader is brainwashed to
they don't at all teach
story
about forcing the culture out of them.
Yeah. I mean, they did modify the curriculum at one point, so it's a little better than it used to be. It does reference that the Native Americans were, decimated.
Subjugated.
And
decimated. Talks
about it a little bit, but you still come away with that the main point of the thing is oh yeah, we built a mission, and that's so that's a big theme. But it's not in any way a conventional thing. All it is you're seeing shots of the mission and shots of statues of Junipero Serra, and I'm telling you this. I have a little animated map sequence that goes through some of it.
What were your influences? Because it's such a unique form of storytelling, I mean, so many people these days, and myself included as a filmmaker, we do the short attention span, fast cuts, it's a lot it's going out on a limb. To have really long, lingering shots and ask people to listen.
Yeah.
For, a good, how long? 70 minutes?
65 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's challenging.
I think, it's pretty bold.
Yeah.
And I had a great editor
pretty butch.
that I worked with. My editor, Don Logston, and my cinematographer, Sophie Constantino. And in the editing, kind of really going I really wanted long takes, and that it puts you as a viewer in a really different space, but you do have these moments of thinking oh my God, are people going to be bored? And you just have to have the confidence, which as experienced filmmakers, you get that confidence of no, this is how it's supposed to be, and I'm gonna force you to sit there, and you're gonna open up, and you're gonna have feelings that you didn't even know were there, and it's I don't know. So Eisenstein had this whole theory about, on the other end of the spectrum, that he wanted to create a physiological impact in the viewer, like in the Odessa Step sequence, where it's just cut, and that you are you're physiologically feeling it. And I want to have a physiological impact on the viewer on the other end of the spectrum, that when you hold the shot, you really like, you can feel your body like relax. And like when I watch films that are more, you know, contemplative pace, when a filmmaker holds a shot, I like, you know, get like teary, like, oh, wow, it takes your breath away.
Yeah.
And so, so that's, you know, part of what I'm trying to achieve. And I think the response has been amazing. Like, it seems like it's working.
That's awesome.
But you asked about influences. Ross McElway, who made Sherman's March, was a huge influence, just in, you know, an unconventional form of essay filmmaking. And then like Chris Marker and Chantal Ackerman, and my friend William E. Jones, who he doesn't make films anymore, but his landscape films were the things that really influenced me and made me want to make this style of film.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, how did you work your own? This has to be my last question because they want me to wrap up. But how did the film become personal? Because I mean, here you're talking about something that's historical and important history that needs to be told. And then how did you work your own personal journey into that?
Right. Well,
what was that personal journey you worked in?
I mean, the thing is, it's not like a conventional personal documentary in the sense of like, here's me speaking as me in a very simple, direct way. It's very multi-layered, and one of the things I talk about is watching Hollywood movies and kind of identifying as a fictional character. And the truth is, the voiceover is kind of a character. Like, in the same way that songwriters or poets take on a persona, like, I feel like I'm in a persona. Like, I think of it as I'm a character. The voice in the film is a character. It's not literally me. I mean, it is me in many ways, but it is also this character. And so, which makes it easier, because it's really difficult to make a personal film and kind of put it all out there, and I also didn't want to do that in any conventional way.
Right.
And so it's very unconventional in that way, but it does have this kind of reflection on gender identity and being queer, and but in a hopefully in a poetic way, and people say that they identify
my
with
mind
it.
automatically goes to paralleling sort of the co-opting that happened, and sort of the co-opting of our natural identity, whatever that is, who we are as humans, and having to fit that into any number of categories that we're assigned.
Well, the great thing is that it seems like people, all different kinds of people, are identifying with it, and I think that's true of any stories. It's like, you say like, it's a women's film, or it's a black film, or it's a gay film, but a good film is a good film, and people watch it and say, wow, that was a great film.
Like, and I related to it completely on a different level than somebody else. Yeah, that's great. And people are bringing what they're bringing to it. What are you going to do for the release plans?
Well, Sundance is so great. The Sundance Artist Services Program, they can get you direct digital release. So I will have an iTunes and a Netflix streaming release later in the year through them, and which
Fantastic.
I can't say enough great things about
they're
Sundance,
great.
The way they support us as artists, and it's going to play a ton of festivals. Maybe in my dreams, please, Criterion Collection DVD release would be like the dream of all dreams. But I don't, I don't know if that's in the cards.
I don't even know if DVD in general.
I work for Wolf Video, and we're the biggest LGBT DVD distributor. And we're still, DVD is not dead. People do want to own DVDs,
I like 'em.
but it's a harder and harder business.
But you just kind of want to have that DVD.
It's nice to be able to have the actual thing.
I'm with you. I'm with you, sister.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on BYOD and for bringing a beautiful film into the world.
Thank you so much.
Documentary, and for stretching the boundaries of documentary.
I'm excited.
Always great
about that. Yeah.
It's always great to have people on who are just doing things differently. It allows all of us to think, how can we make our films differently? So thanks. Thanks for pushing the envelope.
Thank you.
All right, this has been another, I think, I'm partial, but I think it's been another fantastic BYOD. And I'm going to bring you another one in just a minute. Stay tuned.
I'm inordinately obsessed with the stories of others, seeking within them the key to sharing my own. I want to tell you a story about love and loss in San Francisco that reveals more about me than I ever expected to say. I've been filming the landscapes of San Francisco since just a few years after I arrived here. In capturing these images on film, I'm engaged in a completely impossible and yet partially successful effort to stop time. I now own the landscapes that I love. These images serve as a reminder of what once was and as a prompt to appreciate what now is. Spending time in Los Angeles, I crossed paths with so many women, mostly unavailable somehow. Straight, married, crazy, what have you. I'm invigorated by the sense of possibility here. People believe good things will happen at any moment,